One of the themes I'm seeing now is a sense of that after nearly 3 months, it's all over. It's coming to the end. We've flattened the curve. It's finished. The reality, unfortunately, is that the coronavirus is anything but finished. If we look at the history of other pandemics, particularly the 1918 global flu, the second wave was much worse than the first because people relaxed. People thought it was over. So there's a real danger about being lulled into thinking that it's all over. And there's also not only the frustrations about being cooped up or not getting around, but there's also, unfortunately, a lot of politics. We won't cover that at all. It's just we notice that it's there. So from a business perspective, we really need to be thinking first about what happens next when if we're going to get something anything like the 1918 flu, which is lots of continuing action over lots of periods of time with sporadic changes. But before we do that, we really need to review first. We need to do an after-action review. An after-action review, the fundamentals are no blame and pin your stripes at the door. No one is more important than anyone else. Everyone had a role to play. We've had a very strong illustration of this in that most of the so-called essential work in the coronavirus was people who had often the lowest pay, but still the most important, without which things don't happen. So we need to get clear about what worked. So when we look at this, for each of the actions, what was supposed to happen? Was there a plan at all? Did we have a risk management plan? If we didn't, then we definitely need one. What actually happened? What's the actual information that we have about what went on? Do we have any information about what actually happened in our business in terms of the disruptions? Then we say, what's the source of the difference? What worked, what didn't work, giving equal importance to both, not just focusing on what didn't work, but we focus on what did work as well. And we look for the lessons learned. What can we do differently next time if there's anything like this? Because, bluntly, there is going to be something like this. So we then need to get ready for what's basically a random disruption. This time round, pretty much everything closed down on a countrywide basis in most cases. But what we're coming up to is, as we get better at track and trace, there's going to be little random disruptions, little hotspots flaring up, which means that for a widespread business, you're going to have individual areas that suddenly don't work. So it's a quite different kind of disruption, in some ways harder to work with. So we need checklists, rather like in a fire environment. What are your assets? Where are they located? How can you move them to be better situated for random change? Another one is to focus on fungibility. In other words, the exact interchangeability. What can I swap in that will do the same job? And particularly adaptability on the fly. When we look at big natural disasters like the Hurricane Katrina on New Orleans, there's a lot of requirement for ability to adapt. I think, as the head of Walmart said, a lot of you are going to have to make decisions far above your level. That's fine. But also what came out of that was the real importance of having support from the top as to what we're expected to do when we are having to do things differently from our normal way of working. It's fine having a fixed set of rules and roles and responsibilities and reporting relationships when everything is stable. When it's not, we need a quite different way to do this. And we need to know the difference between the two. If we look at an army, for example, in peacetime, in stable conditions where nothing's happening, it has a very hierarchical set of reporting relationships. When it's going into real-time chaos, which is what a battlefield is essentially, then the communication structure changes completely. It's much more lateral. And the hierarchy is a hierarchy of information flow rather than a hierarchy of command. The role of the hierarchy is to keep everyone informed rather than try to control. So we need to think of our organisations in those circumstances where suddenly someone is going to be dumped in chaos while the rest of us are carrying on around them. And it's difficult to deal with that kind of variance. So the other one is always to link risk and response and risk and opportunity as a symmetric pair. We never get risk without opportunity. We never get opportunity without risk. So we need to work with them always as a pair. Whenever we're looking at the risks of something, what can we learn? For example, very real example, a lot of organisations had believed before that they could not do work at home. Well, now many organisations have found that yes, they can, and they can do it very fast indeed. Switching things in and out to be able to deal with this. So we've got to be prepared for a period of not so much total disruption, which is what we've had, but a period of random little disruptions that are in some ways even more disruptive than the big one. So these are the tactics that we can use to start getting prepared for random disruption.